So we are so pleased that Heather Stapleton is our speaker today. So Heather boasts a rich background spanning nonprofit leadership, environmental education, and community engagement. She is currently a community engagement coordinator for the Indian River Lagoon National Estuary Program, and she gets to channel her passion for environmental advocacy and to fostering community connections. As such, she is very actively involved in the local community, is passionate about history, culture, and the environment. And when Heather isn't working, she'll likely perform on stage at a community theater or sing with local choirs. And then she also does phenomenal cooking, much of which things that are grown in her backyard,
Yes.
which I enjoy. So thank you so much for joining us. I'll turn it over to Heather.
I am so excited to be here. And I know so many people in the audience. Maybe I know you online too, I'm not sure. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for spending your time to learn. Thanks. I know you could be doing a multitude of things today, including like just curled up with a nice book on the couch, because that's kind of where I might like to be. And instead you gave your time to be here and learn today. So I really appreciate that. I do have multiple disclaimers for this presentation. And the first one is, this isn't really about recycling. I've found that in giving this presentation, people have a million bajillion questions about recycling. Here's the thing. I'm advocating for reducing, reusing, and then as a last resort, recycling. Hopefully you will see in this presentation, I have pretty strong feelings about recycling. And as a lot of you were already talking about when you entered, it is a flawed system. We should still use it, but only as a last resort. And so that's kind of my first disclaimer. My second disclaimer is there's rarely such thing as perfect. I do not pretend to be plastic free. A plastic diet, just like when you go on a food diet, you still eat food, you just don't eat as much. So same thing, I am nowhere near being plastic free. Know better, do better. I'm just trying to do as best as I can. And at the end, I brought a bajillion things for show and tell that we can talk about as well. So single stream recycling was intended to make recycling easier. The thought would be if the process is easier, more people will do it. But what we now know is actually it's backfiring, and less is recycled than ever before, especially when it comes to plastic. Globally, only about 9% of recyclable plastic actually gets recycled. And that's even less locally. The remainder is burned, buried, or as we all well know, becomes litter. Just driving here on US 1, right out front. We have those crazy windy days. I mean, I'm not blaming anybody. You know, we've probably all accidentally created litter. You go to an outdoor festival and something escapes from your pocket when you take your phone out. We've all been there, and this isn't a judgmental thing at all. But just so much plastic litter, and that's what I want to talk a lot about today. In the US as a whole, slightly over 18% of total municipal solid waste in landfills is plastic. So we keep making and buying more plastic while recycling less and less of it all the time. And if you haven't, if you have not yet seen the documentary, The Story of Plastic, I highly recommend that you do. It's put on by an organization called The Story of Stuff. They've existed for quite a while. This new-ish documentary is very eye-opening. So what is the recycling process? Well, the recyclables are sent to facilities known as the Materials Recovery Facility. They all work similarly. Some are more advanced than others. Some are quite old and therefore not as energy efficient. They are rather technological, amazing innovations. I will admit that. So once the stuff leaves the cart at the end of your driveway, it goes to this MRF where they have these really complicated systems. I liken it to a Rube Goldbergian contraption, but it's like a whole warehouse of Rube Goldbergian contraption where there are magnets and blowers and conveyor belts and stuff falling all over the ground. It's pretty overwhelming. And then once it goes through the process at the MRF, they get the materials get baled up what can be baled up for recycling. So they try to bale up like materials. Oftentimes this is very challenging. This is where a lot of the cross contamination occurs, is in those bales. So so this diagram makes it all look just neat and orderly, and I don't see any litter, and everybody looks, like they're doing their jobs. But as you can imagine, these places are just a cacophony of sound. They smell disgusting. They look disgusting. It's highly overwhelming if you ever get a chance to visit one. So a diagram looks lovely, but when I arrived at my local MRF, which happens to be in St. Lucie County, the MRF that is closest to me receives recycling from Martin County, St. Lucie County, Indian River County, and the city of Palm Bay, as opposed to the rest of Brevard goes to the MRF in Cocoa. But this is the MRF in St. Lucie County. So I arrive and I see that. I'm already like disgusted by all that trash just out exposed to the elements. And there are all these weird leaking liquids seeping down from places that were equally as gross. And then we got inside and I could not believe the smell, the sounds. That's someone's job, 40 hours a week to sort through my refuse. That just, it just, for me, this was completely life-changing. I grew up with the whole, the crying Indian and Woodsy the owl and all of those things. And I honestly thought that all the negativity that I had heard about recycling was just hyped up, that it wasn't quite true. It was my extremely eye-opening visit to the MRF that first made me realize, wow, maybe there is some truth to all the negativity that you hear about recycling. So typically, it's really hard to say on average, but typically a MRF consumes between 50 to 100 kilowatts of energy per ton of material processed. Some are more efficient than others. The one in St. Lucie County is older than the one in Cocoa. The one in Cocoa just got a really big, nice upgrade. But this is what's happening. And so eventually that third picture that came up on the screen there, that's the ultimate goal of the MRF, is just to bale up like materials and to be able to sell them. And this is why recycling changes over time. Well, glass used to be recycled, and now it's not. What's going on? In theory, it's still recyclable, but there's no market for it. So right now, as of today, the biggest market is for cardboard and metal. Plastic would be third, and there's basically no market for glass at all right now. That's why it's not worth the fuel costs of going around and collecting it. It's a very heavy material. So even though it is recyclable, it's just not financially feasible to do it. It just doesn't make financial sense. And not that these companies need to make huge profits, but it does need to be worth their while. And right now, glass, unfortunately, is not worth their while. We did talk about some other projects, small scale projects, where other entities are reusing glass. They're turning it into sand. There's a really cool one in Louisiana where they're turning it into sand and using that in restoration projects where the wetlands are encroaching on land, and so they're using it for land restoration activities. So those were photos. Here comes 2 videos. We hope that you at home can't have sound, don't have sound, because this could be really loud. So if you have headphones on at home, just be warned, just in case.
Sound is not fair.
And it's just a big soup of stuff. It is amazing to me. This is outside. Oh, right. This is outside of the MRF in St. Lucie County. There's a big ditch right here. Just look at all of that litter leaving the facility, going into the ditch, which will certainly go straight into the Indian River Lagoon at some point. This was just beyond. This was so disgusting to me. I just couldn't handle it. If you thought inside was bad enough, and then all of this, and much of that is materials that should have never even been put into the bins or the carts in the first place. Contrast that with this. So the previous two videos were taken at the MRF in St. Lucie County. These two videos are taken at the MRF in Cocoa. How amazing, a huge of a difference. So in general, MRFs are very similar in the way they process materials and what happens on the inside. But just having visited these two MRFs, you can see there is a huge difference. I don't know if you can see the sandhill cranes in that second video, but there's a huge difference. And I have to say, I definitely felt more comfortable on arrival at this MRF. On the inside, it's exactly the same. It's loud. There's weird liquids all over the place. There's weird smells all over the place. But at least this one was really quite tidy in comparison on the outside. So the problem with recycling, or one of the problems with recycling, is wish cycling. When you wish something were recyclable, but it's not. And so you put the items in the recycling bin anyway. You either just think, well, it's plastic, somebody's going to recycle it, or maybe you just don't have the time to do the research, quite honestly, because maybe you just moved here from Washington. Maybe you are a snowbird and you live elsewhere in the summer and you come down to somewhere in Florida for the winter and your rules are different. And so that is one of the things, is that when we wish cycle, it contaminates the stream. It's harder to process. A lot of times an entire batch of materials gets collected, sent to the MRF, and then recollected only to be sent to the landfill anyway, just wasting all of that time, energy, and effort, because cross-contamination is such a big problem. About 21% of what goes to the MRF in Brevard County and at the Cocoa MRF, about 21% of that actually has to get rediverted to the landfill anyway. So when we recycle, we need to be much more diligent about ensuring that what we think is recyclable in this particular location really is. And so it's just important to educate ourselves. Every time you go live somewhere different, just like you learn which streets are one way and you learn speed limits on streets, they're all different no matter where you go. Recycling, unfortunately, is also one of those things that can be different no matter where you go. And so when we spend significant amounts of time in different locations, we just have to learn how to recycle properly. But still, I cannot emphasize enough. Please do not leave here today thinking, oh, Heather says recycling is the way to go. Heather does not say that. Heather says reduce, reuse, and then recycle right. So at, I think this was actually at the Cocoa MRF, all of these are caps. So if you've been told that caps are not recyclable, they kind of are, but you have to leave them on the container, because if you take them off, they will just fall through all those little Rube Goldbergian contraptions and just start piling up all over the place in the MRF. And then somebody has to sweep that up and throw those away. This was so strange to me that people think that, what do you call those gas things? The propane tanks, thank you, that propane tanks and gas tanks are recyclable because they're metal. So this is a whole area at the Cocoa MRF that is just piled up with propane tanks and gas tanks. Because it's metal and metal's recyclable. The day I went, well, I've now been to 2 different MRFs 3 different times. So stuff starts to get confusing, but one trip to the MRF, someone had tried to recycle an electric paint sprayer. So someone had tried to recycle a bowling ball. There's golf balls everywhere in the MRF. There were just tons of golf balls everywhere. And as you can imagine from the videos that I showed you earlier, those things just become dangerous. They have to stop the entire process and service the equipment. A golf ball could easily break something. A golf ball could easily ping out of a cog and hit somebody. I mean, these are real problems, real safety issues. And every time that the MRF needs to be repaired, obviously it stops processing the recycling, but your recycling is still being picked up from the end of your driveway and being delivered to the MRF until it starts to pile up and pile up and pile up, and they can't accept anymore. And in those instances, all of the recycling has been picked up only to go to the landfill. So every time we put something incorrect in our recycling bin cart, we run the risk of shutting down the whole MRF. And every time the MRF gets shut down, depending on for how many hours, how many days, we run the risk of all of that recyclable materials just going to the landfill. And cross-contamination even of the bales. This picture got a little distorted on this slide, but in the back, that is baled up plastic. And front and center, there's an American flag that got put into the recycling cart at the end of somebody's driveway. It ended up at the MRF. It somehow escaped the sorting of the human aspect and the technology aspect at the MRF. And an American flag made it into a recycling bale. And this is precisely why other countries have stopped accepting bales of recyclables from America, because we have too much cross-contamination, and financially it wasn't worth it for them to receive these materials either. So that's another big problem. So in Indian River County, 800 tons of waste is every single day goes to the landfill itself. About 80 tons of recycling does get to the MRF from Indian River County, but over 92 tons of recycling doesn't get recycled in Indian River County. Over half of the landfill is food, and yet in Indian River County, 1 in 4 children don't even get enough food. So in Indian River County, 2 of the Solid Waste Management District employees have started a really cool program called Treasure Coast Community Fridges, and they've been trying to work with some locally owned restaurants and even some chain restaurants, and are collecting food at the end of the day that could possibly be frozen or served right away. And they operate 3 anonymous, they call them fridges, but it's a very small pantry that does have a refrigerator in it. So shelves and a fridge, and people can go there anonymously and get food. Nobody does background checks. It's just all run by the community themselves in an effort to try and make use of otherwise wasted food. In Indian River County, in our landfill, cell 1 closed long ago. Cell 2 just recently closed last year. Its life expectancy was 10 years, but it only had a lifespan of actually 5.5 years. So this is worrisome. Cells 3 and 4 will be opened soon. Today's cost is $17 million per cell, and that is likely to only increase, into the future. And so we now know that in Indian River County, our landfill will likely close before 2060. So all of the cells will have been occupied with trash, and there won't be any more space in Indian River County for our trash. What's happening in Brevard County? Similar, slightly different statistics the way they were presented for me, so these aren't totally analogous, but the central disposal facility in Cocoa takes over 1 million tons per year. The cell 1 life expectancy was supposed to go to mid-2028. It did not make it that far. And so here's kind of what's happening. Cell 2 already opened in 2023. The cost of $32 million back in 2023. And cell 3 opening, we know that we will need it. That opening date is to be determined, and it will likely cost about $45 million to open up that third and final cell there. So that is, yeah, I see a lot of folks shaking their heads in the background. It's a lot to deal with. This is not a happy lunchtime topic, I'm sorry. So if those landfill statistics weren't disgusting enough, we also know that just litter and microplastics are becoming more and more of an issue for animals can accidentally eat the plastic, and the plastic themselves can do harm in the body, or the plastic can give the animal a false sense of full. And so then it doesn't eat, and ironically, it starves to death, even though its stomach is full of stuff, just not full of the right stuff. And of course, entanglement, especially with birds, happens frequently. And we are learning every day, we are learning more and more about the toxicity of microplastics, which is quite concerning. And so in the Indian River Lagoon, we know that we are heavily polluted with microplastics, and microplastics work their way up the food chain and they bioaccumulate in the top of those food chains. And it's not just the microplastics themselves, but they are frequently coated in other toxic substances that they just kind of pick up from floating around in the environment. University of Central Florida has been doing an ongoing study about microplastics in oysters, and they estimate about 1 piece of plastic per liter of water in the lagoon. Down in Indian River County, well, Orca is headquartered in Indian River County, but they actually work in all of the counties of the Indian River Lagoon. And the fish that they have sampled thus far as part of their One Health monitoring project, 71% of fish have had microplastics in their, from the lagoon, have had microplastics in their stomachs, and 60% have had microplastics in their flesh, the stuff that we eat, the part that we eat. So definitely present in the Indian River Lagoon, and this is not that different than what's being found in international waters. So pretty much the same kinds of statistics. And of course, we are finding more and more microplastics in the human body. Pretty much now every single part of the human body has been found with microplastics, and alarmingly, brains from cadavers that were donated to science have, in the past 6 years, 50% more microplastics were found compared to 2016 to 2024. We found 50% more microplastics in the human brains. So all of this is very concerning. You can, of course, the body knows that microplastics aren't supposed to be there, and you can try to eat as healthfully as possible and eliminate. A lot of microplastics just would naturally get eliminated from your body. The more healthy, cleanly, high fiber diet you can eat, the more microplastics will be eliminated. But you cannot avoid microplastics at this point. It's even in the air that we breathe. And so microplastics is a real growing concern for human health as well. So all of that negativity that fueled by my visits to the MRF, and just it made me like get really motivated. I could have just become apathetic and done nothing, but that's not really me. So rather than focus on the bad stuff, I was like, okay, well, what can I do about this? So enter my plastic diet, which was not simple, but I found like-minded people who could support me. I started very small. Sorry for those of you who can't see me on the screen. This is probably one of the first things that I had already been doing. It's just a reusable straw. And I hear a lot of people poo-poo the reusable straw. This is just an entry into a more environmentally friendly life. Nobody ever said that a reusable straw is going to save the planet. We're not that naive. It's just if we can start making small changes, that will undoubtedly lead to something bigger. And for me, actually, one of the other things that led to, I love straws. I wish I didn't, but I do. Okay, this looks totally normal, right? Well, I actually have a hidden reusable straw right here on my purse so that when I go out to eat, as long as I can remember to tell my server no straw, please, which is not easy, I have a perfect reusable straw. And if it gets all goopy from, I don't know, a margarita or something, it can go back into this container, right? And so it just telescopes right down in, and I won't get my pocket or my purse all goopy with, sticky stuff. So reusable straws was one of my entry points. I will admit I've been using a Soda Stream since 2009. I am a sucker for a fizzy beverage. And most fizzy beverages, unless we're talking champagne, do come in plastic or cans. But guess what? Cans are wrapped in plastic. I never thought about like even the stuff I buy that's not in plastic, these come on pallets that are shrink wrapped in plastic. If you have ever been to Walmart or a grocery store during the stocking hour, you will be alarmed at how much plastic, even though you're trying to reduce plastic. So when I said it's impossible to be plastic free, it really is impossible to be plastic free. So starting small, but building over time and just being consistent with the things that work. Some things for me just didn't work. And so I could not get used to using bar soap for my dishes. I just didn't work for me. And so I said, okay, this is causing too much annoyance. This is not the thing for me. I will focus my efforts elsewhere and then share my progress and my challenges. For me, my Facebook page had never had a raison d'etre, but now I can share when I find a new product or when some new habit works really well for me. It's kind of exciting to share that progress on social media, hear what other people are doing, but also just be really honest and admit when things aren't working. Oh, yeah. You also have to be willing to answer lots of questions. So, one of the, I admit, kind of off the wall ideas that I had. I do eat a lot of cheese, I will admit. I don't eat a lot of meat, but I do eat a lot of cheese. And I started taking I just washed this. I started taking my reusable containers to the deli. So yes, the cheese at the deli is wrapped in plastic. But once they cut off a chunk or make slices for me, I just use a reusable container as a snap-on lid. The reason I bought these containers is I just knew that if I brought glass and me or somebody behind the counter, dropped that glass container, I would ruin it and nobody would ever be able to bring a reusable container ever again anywhere. So I did go out intentionally and purchase these. And then the sticker, they just stick it right on top. So in the grocery store, when you've got these in your grocery cart, people are going to notice, they're going to ask you questions. And so I had to be willing just to be a little bit more social at the grocery store and which I know I'm not always in the mood to be social, even though I do love to talk, both professionally and recreationally. But you just kind of have to be willing to share and just like I said, be really honest about. So my focus was really single-use plastics. I showed you what I took to the deli and the butcher. And by the way, the butcher at the fresh market, they will even allow you to do ground beef and chicken and bacon and whatever. Unfortunately, at Publix, almost all of the meat minus the seafood is now all prepackaged. And I think the seafood will all be prepackaged eventually too. That's too bad, but there are some grocery stores still that will allow me to bring in. Here's the one caveat. At the fresh market, the guy was completely like, "What are you doing? What's happening?" And he said, "Tell you what, do not ever come on a Tuesday." And I was like, "Okay, I'll never come. I promise, I'll never come on a Tuesday. What's up with Tuesdays?" Tuesdays is Chuck and Chicken Day, and apparently they're like super busy at the deli or at the butcher, and they would never have enough time to indulge me with my reusable containers. So that is another thing. You have to go when you're not going to be a nuisance. So don't go, on a Sunday after church or on a Saturday mid morning when these grocery stores are super busy. They're not going to want to mess around with your stuff. So luckily, I like to do my shopping late at night anyway. And so that's kind of what I do. And that's what worked for me. I did check with multiple managers of each grocery store where I shop. They have so many managers, and you never know who might be on staff. And, more flies with honey than vinegar. We just made it work. Making homemade carbonated beverages with my soda stream, that's huge. Trying to shop at farmers markets. I know we in the education world, we work a lot of Saturdays. So sometimes farmers markets just aren't doable, but it is certainly a way to reduce your plastic if you can. Laundry detergent was a huge one for me. Seventh generation used to sell powdered detergent in a substantial cardboard box. They don't do that anymore. Now they sell powdered detergent in a plastic thing, which that was a bummer. And so then I found this online. I'm like, oh, good. There's an alternative. Well, the box is so cheap that I should have thought about this. The powder just came in another bag. So definitely be careful of greenwashing. I have fallen to the ways of greenwash. I've been a victim of greenwashing multiple times, I will admit. Oh, and shampoo bars. That was my best find ever. There are a lot of brands out there that are not so great. And I got really lucky right off the bat. As soon as I tried a shampoo bar, this one called Dip just happened to work for me. And so I assumed that the shampoo bars had significantly changed since the last time I tried one, because I tried one like 15, 17 years ago and hated it. And then I bought this, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And then I bought some other ones that I didn't like so much. So I actually bought 3 styles, all these different brands. This was the only one dip that I really like. And unfortunately, this was a waste of money, so for me. So you could learn from my mistakes and avoid these. But this was huge for me, both shampoo and conditioners in a bar. So even though I couldn't get used to having bar soap for my kitchen sink, bar soap in the tub was no big deal. Cloth napkins, I take it one step further. I don't even use paper towels because they come wrapped in plastic. So I just have some crummy, didn't want to use white, just some crummy dish towels that I use often just to clean up messes and things. And then, eventually they'll make their way into the laundry. Reusable straws, I'm really proud of. If you like snacks, there's no hope. Potato chip bags and pretzel bags and even some cracker bags are a combination of 3 different kinds of plastic. And TerraCycle used to have relationships with like July Harvest, I think that's the brand, and some things like that. And those bags are a single type of plastic, and they can actually be recycled, although not locally. And if you work with TerraCycle, it's an additional cost. And so while I was on my very strict plastic diet, I would just make popcorn at home. I do love popcorn. I've never made homemade tortilla chips, although I have made homemade tortillas, but it's hard. So snacking is definitely hard for sure. And I just had to be really willing to explore products that I might not normally use. So my toilet paper journey could be a whole presentation in and of itself. But I started with plant paper. This is very expensive. If you had a family of 4, I kind of doubt that you would be buying this, honestly. And then I found this quilted northern that was wrapped in paper at the grocery store. Well, it turns out in the toilet paper scorecard that quilted northern actually gets an F for other reasons. So again, victim of greenwashing. This looked amazing. I bought it, and then once I started doing some more research, this has formaldehyde in the paper, as many toilet papers do, by the way. PFAS in the paper, chlorine in the paper. So turns out that wasn't such a great thing.
Heather, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
What did you say about plant paper? I missed that.
It's just expensive.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say, that's what I use in the fridge.
Yeah, if I was just thinking if you had a big family,
Yeah.
or if you had kids who don't have the toilet paper thing quite down yet and can be pretty wasteful, this would be a pretty expensive option for a family. Yeah, and I have no place to buy it locally. So I happen to have been traveling and saw this, I think it was down in Jupiter at a zero waste store, but I don't have a zero waste store, very close to me at all. So that's another problem, is just finding things, especially if you're trying not to do the order online stuff, because you're gonna have plastic associated with that probably too. So right now I'm using Who Gives a Crap, which gets an A- on their scorecard. It's not the best quality of toilet paper though, I have to admit. So the plant paper was great as far as quality goes. It was just really expensive. Who Gives a Crap is not very expensive, but might take some use to getting used to. So that's, like I said, toilet paper has been a journey for me. And we talked about just using a bidet to reduce, if not eliminate, your toilet paper use. So think about those as well. That would be an exploring a new product idea for me. So if anyone online happens to have any strategies, type them in and let us know. And I'd love to know if anyone in the audience has, I'll repeat it so the online folks, if you have a strategy that you think is like a really interesting that maybe other people wouldn't have easily thought of. Anybody have anything they're using?
The Q&A.
Okay.
So Megan says, if you go to Rockledge Gardens, they have an amazing deodorant, soaps, and reusable and non-plastic options.
The online, well, they can read that. Okay, so there are some places that do have, like there's Sunseed Co-op up in northern Brevard that has some things. In fact, I think that's where I got my first purchase of the Who Gives a Crap stuff. So there are like pockets of some stores have a few things available for sure. And so whenever I find something new at a new location, I try to work it into my, like whatever my errand running schedule is. Anybody else have any interesting ideas? I mean, beyond just like reusable bags and things.
Here's another one on
Yeah.
Q&A. Dee says you can buy cloth napkins and rags at thrift shops and it eliminates packaging.
Excellent idea to use thrift shops for sure. That's not only eliminating the plastic, but also reusing, which, huge proponent of that. Any other interesting ideas? Yes, in the back.
I happen to travel a lot, so I got my titanium forks and no
Yes.
plastic stuff.
Yes.
I also have one of those in my bag. I love it.
Yeah, and then, this is a great find, was a company called Bite.
For, yes, for toothpaste. Yes.
So I get the refillable toothpaste bits and, just fill up my various containers that are in various places.
They sell those at Rockledge Gardens.
So for those of
Yeah.
you who are online, we're talking about toothpaste tablets rather than toothpaste in a plastic tube. There's a brand called Bite, and basically you put the tablet in your mouth and you crunch it, and then you can still use your bamboo toothbrush and not have plastic waste, and their containers are refillable. We have more ideas coming from the back. Yes, Laura?
So mine's not easy because like snacks is pretty much impossible to give kids.
Yes.
It was very upfront cost and time intensive, but we cloth diapered with our kid and then we made food.
Yes.
Like the pouches,
repeat
which
that?
my kid loved. I would just throw stuff in the blender and then pre-make them,
So in the back of the room, the executive director of MRC has been sharing some tips that she admits are time intensive, but we're talking about, if you were here in person, we're talking about cloth diapers as well as making your own kids snack foods. We're talking especially like the squeeze pouches, how you can do those things in the blender. Again, definitely a time commitment. So everything becomes a trade-off.
The Bum Genius is the diaper we use.
Bum Genius is a brand that's being touted for their reusable diapers, cloth diapers. Mary, did you have an idea?
Can you tell?
Yes. For those of you online, the audience is so excited here.
So we use, Who Gives a Crap, but you're using the reusable,
The recycled paper,
which is a great idea, but the other
the
product.
bamboo.
Bamboo.
Yes.
Much more comfortable.
I agree with
And
Mary.
it lasts.
Okay.
Yeah.
You don't use as much.
Oh,
and
so
they're
in the
not plastic.
In the audience, we've been told that rather than using the recycled paper version of Who Gives a Crap, that the bamboo is a higher quality. So the bamboo material is higher quality, a little bit thicker. Yeah. And also
Yeah,
What?
it's more expensive.
a little bit more expensive. Also for Who Gives a Crap, also one of the big things I had was, what do I do about my trash
Yeah.
bags? Who Gives a Crap also has trash bags that are made from recycled plastic. Again, this is not, the end all be all for sure. Wouldn't it be amazing if we didn't need trash bags at all? Or you can get paper trash bags for like yard debris, but they are very expensive. If you were going to use those in your kitchens, the paper bags are quite a bit more expensive, but these are, and I have to admit, there's a lot of greenwashing going on with trash bags as well. So whenever you find a trash bag that says it's compostable, it's a lie. It's greenwashing. So in a landfill, barely anything ever biodegrades. And so you're packaging up all your trash in this supposedly compostable trash bag, but once it gets entombed in a landfill, not much decomposition takes place in a landfill. There was a guy back in the early 90s. His name is William Raffy. He calls himself a garbologist. He took a core sample of a landfill and found a hot dog and a pastry that looked good enough to eat. And he wondered, I wonder how long these things have been in here. He found a newspaper in the same core sample. You could read the date. And at that point, that hot dog and that pastry had been in the landfill for 50 years, as well as the newspaper. And you could still read portions of the newspaper and you could still identify this was a pastry, this was a hot dog. So decomposition doesn't occur in a landfill, and most communities are not fortunate enough to have commercial compost facilities also. So that's a little bit tricky as
I was
well.
gonna say, Heather, for like my mom was so happy when she found the sandwich bags that said they were compostable, but they're only industrial compostable.
Yes.
Which is very specific.
So we are now talking about the difference between at-home composting and commercial versus industrial composting. So when the bioplastic alternatives first started coming out, and I mean, this is like 20 years ago, I was so excited. I was at a farmer's market and I got my iced coffee in a supposedly compostable, I don't remember what it was made of. It was a plant-based plastic, put it in my at-home compost bin. For 8 years, I was still finding little broken up pieces of plastic in my compost pile. And that's when I started to question the true environmentally friendliness of these plant-based plastics, which is, that's a whole, I'm not an expert on that, but that's a whole other minefield of greenwashing possibilities for sure.
You've got quite a few on.
Okay,
So first one is using a safety razor with replaceable razor blades.
nice.
Recyclable blades in a metal container and deodorant in cardboard. I personally use the brand Wild for deodorants, which is all cardboard with reusable metal case. Highly recommend. Cleaning products as well.
Oh.
Grove, I love. It's expensive, but glass bottles with reusable things, and Heather has one.
So we've been talking about just the alternative products that are out there, and there is usually a cost difference for sure. So maybe not appropriate for everyone. One of the cool things that I found for cleaning products, unfortunately, these little tablets are individually wrapped. But this, instead of buying, this is just a multi-purpose cleaner. You dissolve it in lukewarm water, doesn't have to be hot, and then you can spray it from a reusable spray container. So this is something that is kind of working for me.
What's the brand of that?
This is called Foamin. And for those of you in person, I'm sorry for those of you online, but for those of you in person, you can come and check out all this
At
stuff.
the end, I'll move the camera so they can see your
Okay.
show and tell
Perfect.
table. Megan says that there is a place to get fruits and vegetables and some tree produce that are not in plastic. And as someone who lives in Indian River County, Peterson's is also a really good one. I always bring my reusable produce bags.
Yes. Shacked Groves is pretty good about not pre-packaging everything in plastic. Some stuff is pre-packaged at Shack Groves. That's where I happen to shop. It's a little bit closer for me.
Yeah.
Peterson's in Indian River County is definitely even better as far as the plastic goes.
And then an individual says, I ordered reusable paper towels that I saw on the internet, and all you have to do is reuse them and wash them, and they are easily reusable. I do the same. I have the brand Papaya.
And they kind of like stick to each other so you can make them into a roll.
Not the one I have.
Oh, okay.
Papaya is just a single sheet and it hangs on a hook. You use it for the day and then you pop it in your dishwasher. It sterilizes it and you put it back on the hook.
And that's basically why I've just been using these. In fact, I think I got these from a thrift store. That's why they're not the most amazing condition, but it works, and I'm not using them like as a napkin or things like that on my face.
Okay. Carol says a bidet is a great option. It is hard to go to other places now that don't have bidets because it's a game changer.
Everyone I know, everyone who uses a bidet says now they do not like using the restroom anywhere else except for their own house because they are so happy with the bidet.
I do have to personally agree with that.
Everybody says that.
Although my bidet is plastic.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, we're gonna move on from that show and tell. That was an awesome show and tell, everybody. Yay.
Yeah.
Thank you for all those amazing ideas. I got
I'm sorry, one more.
one more, just
Was,
kidding.
again, thrift store-esque, but if you need an appliance, look at a yard sale or a thrift store
Oh,
first, you don't
yeah.
have to buy something new.
Right, yes. That's a time investment, especially if you're, having to sort through things at yard sales and thrift stores, but it is an option. I've lost control of my
Oh, sorry, that's
remote.
because I'm clicking over
Oh,
here. We do
okay.
have some questions as well.
Okay, we'll get to those.
Okay, there you go.
All right, so as I've said before, I am not plastic free and there's lots of challenges. So for me, I don't have a zero waste shop anywhere near me. I'm still working on finding alternatives. I have found that as far as skin care goes, there are some products that use metal tubes instead of plastic, still has a plastic cap on it. And actually one of my preferred brands uses glass, still a plastic cap on top of it, but it is glass. So I like these two things. Again, nowhere near perfect. If you came into my bathroom, I have plenty of work to do. Plastic free is often more expensive. I also have celiac, so trying to be plastic free and organic and gluten free is practically impossible. And to that, bulk bins don't work for me. I love the idea of the bulk bin section at Sprouts, but every single label says potentially cross-contaminated with wheat. Every single label. It's where those foods get processed and they can't guarantee that there's been no cross-contamination. And if you have celiac, you are even sensitive to minuscule amounts of cross-contamination. But if you don't need to worry about gluten, then go for those bulk bins because they're amazing. The ones at Sprouts, I have never seen such an amazing variety in their selection of bulk bins. Dairy is really challenging. Even if you make your own yogurt, you likely still have to buy milk in either a plastic jug or a cardboard that's lined in plastic anyway. The only example I can brag about is I did make my own coconut yogurt using coconuts that a friend had given me recently.
Wow.
And I ground up the coconut and I actually made coconut milk yogurt that was completely waste free. But it was a time commitment. Do you know how hard it is to open up a dang on tootin' coconut? Especially if you don't have an ice skate laying around. You get the reference? Okay. And then when you go out to eat, it's so hard to remember. The first thing out of your mouth has to be no straws, please, because that's what they do. They bring the water to your table and it usually has a straw in it right away. And greenwashing is challenging. I was saying I was so proud of myself because even where I live, we no longer accept glass. And I thought, oh, I'll stop buying olive oil in glass and I'll buy it in the cans. It does have a little plastic spout on it. And this isn't a pallet that's wrapped in plastic. So even this seemingly plastic free option is not truly plastic free. Online shopping and shipping, I forgot to bring the packing materials there. Some companies are switching to that paper webbed based product for cushioning, and a lot of that is recycled paper and it is recyclable. What's the online? Thrive. I know that Thrive, you can get snacks and things from Thrive and frozen packaged food as well. They ship and use a lot of the recycled paper netting. I don't know how else to describe it. I used to have some with me. I'm sorry I don't have that. Medicines is pretty challenging, but there is an online service that you can transfer your prescriptions to this online pharmacy, and you can get reusable containers, and then your meds get shipped in a little sachet, and then you put them into the reusable container. Again, it's not plastic free, but it is cutting down on plastic. There is also a brand called Coco Plum she's using old medicine bottles to make sunglasses. So that's kind of cool. And then this is the really hard one, is just advocating for extended producer responsibility. So companies will never go less plastic if they're not compelled to do so. And in the documentary Story of Plastic, they give a really poignant example in Europe where the extended producer responsibility laws are very stringent. The companies abide by the laws, but the same companies turn around and do business in Africa, especially in Asia, completely the wrong way, where they're packaging up everything in these little teeny tiny sachets, which you can do nothing with. And so those little sachets are just ubiquitous. And you'll see it in that documentary. It's crazy. So we do, and it's hard. I'm not a very good person at being a little bit more politically active. I'm enthusiastic about what I do, but I admit this is something I could definitely be better at. And the list goes on and on. There's plenty of challenges. I just want to make it clear that I'm not perfect.
Sorry.
Oh, no problem. So, but sometimes I was able to go the extra mile. And so this brand, actually, you can't buy this at Publix anymore, but you used to be able to buy this brand not prepackaged. Now it's all prepackaged. But I used to be able to go to Publix and just they would you can weigh it out and I would reuse that bag back in my purse. Now it's prepackaged. It's prepackaged in paper and cardboard. So I guess that is something good. Farmers markets and I think this was actually a haul from Nelson's farm down in Fort Pierce, but markets like that, it's much easier to go almost plastic free. And then this is my thing I'm super proud of.
Like chickens.
That's chickens. So I helped a farmer friend of mine. I help her process chickens annually because I buy some of those chickens at a discounted rate. And I said, Farmer Linda, I've given up plastic for Lent and we're going to be processing chickens in the middle of Lent. What can I do? So I just took home naked birds. I put my birds in ice in a cooler, took them home to my home, dried them off really, really well, wrapped them in butcher paper. And then the ones I knew that I was going to freeze for a longer time, I did butcher paper and aluminum foil. Aluminum foil is no longer accepted in my recycling cart. Unfortunately, I did not know that at the time. But I was able to have plastic-free chickens for a short time period anyway. So I will celebrate my big wins when I get them. And so just know we will never likely be plastic-free, but a plastic diet is more than doable. So we just have to make adjustments, prioritize differently. We know that simply just recycling is not the answer. For me, doing things like this gets me remotivated. Like I will admit, I was looking in my trash the other day and I thought, oh, you're slipping. Good thing I have to go brag to everybody about how I'm on a plastic diet because now I'm going to be more likely to stick back to it again. And then sharing ideas with everybody really helps me stay accountable. I do need to get better. We all can get better at advocating for extended producer responsibility. But basically, your choices matter, your actions make a difference, and your voice can inspire change.
Very good. Thank you.
And after we do, I know we have some questions. So after we do questions, we can do the show and tell.
Yeah, so I'm gonna start you with a question, and then I'm gonna come around and grab any note cards. If you can hold them in the air, that'd be great. So first question is, do you have any idea why the St. Lucie County MRF had so much litter outside the facility compared to the one in Cocoa? Were their containment measures different? Was it more of an open facility? Any idea if they would normally get fined or cited for releasing all that litter?
So the facility in St. Lucie County is quite a bit older than the one in Cocoa. Structurally, they were very similar. One big difference was at the St. Lucie facility, a lot of where they collected materials that weren't yet ready to process was all outdoors. And I think that is slightly different at the one in Brevard County. Also, the MRF in Brevard County, they are willing to run it to make up for any time that they've had to shut down. They are willing to run it the extra time that it takes to process. So in general, the Cocoa facility doesn't get as much backed up materials as the St. Lucie County one does. I have heard, I don't know if this is true or not, but I've heard the St. Lucie County MRF has to shut down at least once a month. So that's a problem because it's just not as modern as the one in Cocoa. Fines, I know nothing about whether or not anybody's getting fines, but there could definitely be some fines doled out as a disincentive to all of that litter. I mean, it was just mind blowing.
Yeah.
And I had been there twice, and it was only on that second time that I even got to see that side of things. So I don't think I was really even supposed to have seen that, quite honestly. And you know, it also, in all honesty, the Cocoa Murph knew that this big contingent of people were arriving. Did they go out and clean things up in advance? I don't know. I don't think so. I didn't get the sense they were trying to trick us, because you could tell, like, beyond, there's nothing caught up in the fence and there was nothing in the ditch. So I think they're just doing a better job. And I saw them, like, with a big push broom after some truck had unloaded something. Here came this guy with this huge push broom and was making an effort to clean up the little bits.
All right, if you don't have an answer to this one, I do.
Okay.
Looking for tips for litter box waste handling.
Litter box. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. So, when we collect dog waste and cat waste, really your best option is to put it in the trash. Please do not flush these things.
Yeah, no flushing.
Yeah,
Parasites.
Even if you supposedly buy flushable litter, our sewer systems, wastewater treatment systems rather, are not designed to deal with pet pathogens. They're not even designed to deal with human pharmaceuticals. So they're not really all that advanced. So let's not put the extra strain on those systems. You shouldn't really be composting pet wastes in Florida. Cats and dogs are carnivores. They are not, that their waste is not like horse waste, for example. Horses are herbivores. Their waste product is very different, breaks down much more easily. Horse waste does not become a place for bacteria and viruses to thrive because it's not as acidic as cat and dog waste. So really, you should be bagging it up in your trash to go to the landfill. But do you want to add to that?
That was gonna be mine
Okay.
as well. One way that I've heard, I have a lot of animals. One way that I've personally reduced plastic, because I was getting the bins of cat litter, which are in a huge plastic tub, is I'm now getting a different brand that's in a cardboard box instead.
So for those of you at home, we've talked about how cat litter is also available in a cardboard box instead of in a plastic tub.
Yeah. Another question for you, Heather, is what about baggies? What's a good substitute?
Oh,
Like snack bag?
Oh, shoot.
I'm assuming that was a snack bag.
Yeah, I forgot. So I do have silicone, the alternative silicone bags.
Which are
think-
dishwasher safe.
I think they're in my freezer right now, which is why I forgot to bring them. I do grow a lot of fruit, and when we have too much fruit, I start freezing it for future smoothies. And I use those silicone zip bags, which are infinitely reusable and washable. They also make larger ones that have a little bit more structure to them. They're not quite like a baggie, but it's also not as substantial as a container that you can reuse, and supposedly you can even microwave in it, but I don't do that.
I'm a seamstress. I make my own little cloth bags, which I really like, that have like a little Velcro closure. What was in the back?
Yeah, so I forget the brand. I feel like it was Oceana or something like that, but just paper, instead of what's the common plastic bag brands.
Oh, Ziploc.
Yeah, instead of Ziploc bags, just paper bags,
Yeah.
especially for day use.
Wax bag.
Yeah, so in person, we were talking about the option of just paper bags sometimes might suffice, or even a waxed paper bag might suffice. I have used a lot of butcher paper at my house. You do have to be careful though. Some butcher papers are lined in plastic, and they actually brag about that. So Publix and Fresh Market, both their butcher paper is lined in plastic. And then I found some brands on, for sale, and they're like now lined in plastic. And I thought, no, that's not what I want now. Trying to get away from that.
I have kind of two more like common suggestions.
Okay.
So one is Southwest Airlines has gone to bamboo drink cups and coffee stirrers, which is good because if you're assuming how many flights they do every day,
Yes.
the daily basis, like daily load of it is humongous. And then Dee was wondering if you could repeat the name of the documentary.
Oh, the name of the documentary is called The Story of Plastic. I believe it's streaming on Amazon. I think that I went to Florida Oceanographic hosted a community screening and had a great discussion afterwards. So that's initially where I saw it, but I believe that documentary is available on Amazon.
Yeah, and then Cheryl recommends Wrap in Mat, which I am not.
Oh, yes. So Wrap and Mat is a brand. It's cloth, but it's lined in a reusable plastic, and the whole thing is reusable. And also along with Wrap and Mat, that's the brand name is beeswax materials as well. I have to admit, they don't work well for me for whatever reason. They just don't. But I have tried them. I even have a little kit somebody gave me if I want to make my own beeswax cloth. It's not very hard to make the beeswax cloth, but for me, honestly, I would rather use, reusable containers like this when and if I can.
Yeah. Okay, back to like the MRFs. Any idea how much, actually this is landfill, of landfill waste is construction debris? With all the new development, this could be a really significant amount.
I don't know how much, on average, construction waste contributes to landfills. Obviously, construction crews are having to pay in order to dump all of that off at the landfill. They have to pay by weight. One thing I worry about is last hurricane season where I live, we had like 17 tornadoes spawn through, and think of all of the debris, the excess. And I'm not talking about just trees and vegetative debris, all of the building material that ended up in a landfill as well. And so I think that in Florida, with the amount of hurricanes and tornadoes that we have, we probably do have an unfair share of construction debris going into our landfills. I don't know any statistics about that though.
Yeah. Okay. Are hard molded plastics less likely to decompose and disintegrate into dangerous microplastics? So for example, a detergent bottle versus like a single-use plastic bag you get from the grocery store.
So sure, single-use plastics are always going to be at the bottom of the food chain. I don't, or like that's how I started, was just trying to avoid single-use plastics. And by the way, the year that for Lent that I gave up plastic, this is still how much plastic I generated. Even I did it for like 5.5 months. So I went a little extra than just Lent. I did have to have a medical procedure in there. So some of this is that. But even trying like my hardest to not buy plastic, this is how much plastic waste I still had in 5 months. Like some of these items were already in my fridge and or freezer. So start with single-use plastics. Yes, those are going to be the worst. Those are going to break down fastest into microplastics for sure. I guess the one redeeming quality about the hard plastics, like a detergent bottle, those can be recycled. Again, that's not the end all be all. Remember, I really want you to not leave here thinking that Heather loves recycling, because I don't. It's reduce, reuse, recycle right. So yes, but all of those things, any kind of plastic, once it is exposed to the sun, once it is exposed to weather, it is going to break down rapidly in Florida. In fact, even some options that we have been using for restoration projects, we're now learning even those plastics, just aren't appropriate for Florida's intense sunlight. It gets really brittle and breaking down into smaller and smaller pieces.
All right. In single-use scenarios, is glass better than plastic, even if the plastic can be recycled, but the glass goes to the landfill?
I don't know. And what do we mean by better? Like glass is heavy. If it's a bottle of wine, it's probably not coming from Florida. It's probably what's the carbon footprint of transporting heavier packaging to you? I have no idea how to answer those questions. For me, it's just constantly, trying to learn and trying to do the best that I can. But we have maybe an answer in the back.
Well, just a different perspective. But you're right. They're both difficult because the glass is so heavy for transportation, to get around the country. But if you're concerned about plastic leaching into your thing that you're gonna eat or drink.
Yeah.
So I avoid all plastic packaging.
That's what I was
I'll
gonna
avoid
say.
all plastic stuff on the shelf that's been sitting there.
Mhm.
So I would opt for glass.
So for those of you who are at home, from a human health perspective, it is likely healthier to consume things that have been packaged in glass instead of plastic. We know that microplastics leach into our food. And so someone in the live audience here is suggesting when buying packaged products from the shelf, he tries to avoid plastic food packaging altogether, even though it's a trade-off.
I'm looking at the metal things that you take with you.
Mm-hmm,
That's a great suggestion instead of glass.
mm-hmm.
I would like to know your perspective, if you have one, on the difference between plastic and silicone. Because there's so many silicone products.
From
out there.
from what I have read, silicone is more stable than a traditional plastic. I still wouldn't be comfortable heating up silicone with food in it. That's just a choice I wouldn't make. But I have been using some silicone products in my freezer, which I'm trying not to ever again use Ziplocs in my freezer. I admit, if you open my freezer right now, I have mangoes from last summer frozen in a Ziploc. I do. But little by little, I'm trying to wean myself off. And in some instances, I'm resorting to silicone. I will say, I also save veggie scraps to make my own broth. And I've started freezing those in glass containers because it's easy just to keep smushing stuff down. I like to buy the peanut butter in the really big glass jars. And so I'll reuse those in my freezers. Every now and then they do. I have had a few that have broken in the freezer, but it's not the end of my world.
Right. So I took a course in my grad school called marine pollution. And one of my research projects was specifically on those silicone bags. Cause I said, are they really that much better? And the production of them is actually pretty plastic intensive. But the benefit weighs over Ziplocs of that you reuse them and you reuse them. Human health wise, the silicone is better, but the production of it is unfortunately still pretty plastic
So
intensive.
I don't know if the online people can hear you, but we were just saying that pretty energy intensive and still requires plastic in the manufacturing of the silicone products, but they are more stable. Though so far we haven't discovered that I know of micro silicone
Yeah,
bits.
that's my knowledge now.
Yeah.
That'll be 20 years from now.
Right. Yes.
Are there any other questions online or in our live audience? Mary?
Yes.
So would you talk about plastic bags in the mouth?
Oh, yes. So the question is, would
Get healthier using reusable bags because you forget them in the car.
yeah. Okay. So the question is concerning plastic bags. So I have to admit, some friends of mine who are actually pretty environmentally friendly haven't gotten on board yet with the not getting plastic produce bags. So here's an example of what I use for some of my produce. It has a nice little mesh so it can still breathe. Like if I want to get mushrooms or something, I might use this. So that is an option. Some of them are really nice where they fold up and they can fit in your purse and maybe you'll never forget. Maybe if you have one of these living in your purse, you'll never forget it. But yes, many times people say, oh, I try my best to use my reusable bags and I always forget them in my car. So here are two suggestions in that instance. One, you could just walk back to your car and get them. Extra steps, right? I don't know about you. I am not meeting my steps goal now that it's not turtle season anymore. So I could use the extra steps. Two, like you do at some of the bulk stores, if you're at the checkout and you're like, oh my gosh, I forgot my bags. Just put everything back in your cart. Take your whole cart out to your car where hopefully your bags are in your car and bag them up out there. Because many people are putting those bags in their curbside cart where they then go to the MRF and they get tangled up in the MRF. They're one of the biggest reasons that we have to continually shut down the MRF is people think they should bag up the recyclables. You should not do that. And those bags, though they are recyclable in a different scenario, they are not accepted at the MRF. They get all caught up in that Rube Goldbergian cogs and wheels and everything. And every now and then they have to shut down the MRF exclusively to remove the soft plastics that have gotten caught up in the cogs and wheels. And they have to put on mountain climbing gear because it's so dangerous to get in there and remove all of that soft plastic from those cogs and wheels and things.
And Carol and I would like to remind people, you can ask for paper bags at Publix.
Yes.
They will not give them to you automatically, but you can ask.
But is it really such a big deal if you really have bags in your car and you've just forgotten them? Is it that big of a deal just to wheel I mean, maybe it's pouring down rain and that is a big deal. So maybe that in that instance, request paper. Once you make it a habit, that's one of my steps for success though. Once you stay with something consistently, now I feel naked. If I do go to the grocery store without a bag in my hand, I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? Heather, you're only getting one thing. It's okay. Cause it's such a habit for me now, but it does take practice and diligence to get into that habit for sure.
I'm gonna move the camera so
Yeah.
that they can see the.
Awesome. Take a look at the table and I have some giveaways.
Let me just make sure that that's actually looking at it.
So my first question is, who would like to start a plastic diet that has not yet started a plastic diet? Who would like to start a plastic diet? Anybody? Nobody? Nobody wants to try it? Okay, you're gonna get my preferred brand of plastic-free bar shampoo. Anybody trying to get in the habit of doing reusable straws? Everybody's already doing that. I have, oh, awesome. Some reusable straws, we've got it, a portable one, a portable one. Anybody working in their bathroom to try and get rid of even more plastics? I have some soap just wrapped in paper. Ta-da!
I like the brand
And
Louis
then-
for that as well.
I do have.
I'm just gonna like hold this down so they can actually
Yeah,
see it.
people can take a look at those things. And then because your reusable flatware got stolen, I'm bringing you another set of reusable flatware. So if anybody wants to come take a look at the items, come on up. Otherwise, if you want to email me any questions that you think of later, please feel
What did I do here?
free to do that.
There we go.
And if you need a guest speaker at any other events, let me know. I'm always game.
She does not reading.
Yes, I also read the Lorax.
Yes. All right, thank you all.